session of City Council to order. Our invocation this evening will be by the Reverend Hank Brooks, pastor of the Coastal Community Church. Everybody please stand, and after the invocation, if you will remain standing, to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag.
I'd just like to say, if I could, thank you. Thanks for this opportunity, and thank you for all that you all do. I've lived in Virginia Beach for 27 years now and raised my kids here, and it's a great city. And what you all do is pretty thankless at times, but I'm grateful. What you do matters. So thank you. Let's bow for a word of prayer. Father, I thank you for the good work that happens for the people of this city in this place, and I pray for the men and women here in leadership and ask you would bless them with an extra measure of wisdom, sometimes patience. I pray, Father, for the discussions that will happen today, the decisions that will be made, and I pray that you will be in the midst of all of them. The Bible says for us to pray for the city, and that's what I do, and for all the people here tonight. Bless this gathering, this meeting, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would like to remind everyone that the City Council speaker policy that allows certain representatives of groups to speak for 10 minutes applies only to planning items and items where a public hearing is required by state law. As to all other items on the agenda, each speaker, whether speaking individually or on behalf of a group, will have 3 minutes to speak. May I have a certification of the closed session? Well, we didn't. We did, yeah.
So moved.
Certification of the closed session, please.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made. Second. Vote is open.
By a vote of 9-0, you have certified the closed session to be in accordance with a motion to recess.
May I have a motion to approve the informal and formal session meeting, the minutes of May the 1st, 2018?
So moved.
Second.
Vote is open.
By a vote of 8-0 with Mr. Moss abstaining, you have approved the minutes as submitted.
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Mr.
I missed the last formal session because my mother-in-law passed away during the meeting and I had to leave to meet with my wife.
Is Danette Smith here, Director of Human Services? Please come forward. Danette, I'd like to read this proclamation, if I may. Whereas mental health is essential to everyone's overall health and well-being, and whereas all Americans experience times of difficulty and stress in their lives, and whereas prevention is an effective way to invest in mental health wellness, and whereas there is a strong body of research that supports specific tools that all Americans can use to better handle challenges and protect their health and well-being, and whereas mental health conditions are real and prevalent in our nation, and whereas with early and effective treatment, those individuals with mental health conditions can recover and lead full, productive lives. And whereas each business, school, government agency, healthcare provider, organization, and citizen has a responsibility to promote mental wellness and support prevention efforts. And whereas a newly formed Virginia Beach Mental Health Awareness Coalition has adopted a theme, Celebrate Your Mental Health, and encourages all citizens to embrace mental health as part of total well-being. Now therefore, I, Louis R. Jones, Mayor of the City of Virginia Beach, Virginia, do hereby proclaim May 2018 Mental Health Month in Virginia Beach, and furthermore call upon the citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools in Virginia Beach to recommit our community to increasing awareness and understanding of mental health, the steps our citizens can take to protect their mental health, and the need for appropriate and accessible services. Further proclaim May 14, 2018, Mental Health Awareness Day in Virginia Beach, and encourage all citizens to celebrate their mental wealth by wearing green for mental health awareness and participating in healthy services. In testimony whereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause the official seal of the City of Virginia Beach, Virginia, to be affixed this first day of May 2018. Signed, Louis R. Jones, Mayor.
So good evening, Mayor, as well as to all the city council members, as well as our city manager. I want to thank you so much for that proclamation. I can't say to you how important it is that you acknowledge how important mental health wellness really is in this community. As many of you know, we had a mental health forum back in April, so we started celebrating mental health early. This is the month for mental health, but we had a mental health forum in April 12th, where we had over 400 people throughout the city of Virginia Beach who came to learn about the importance of mental health, and most importantly, what the city was doing about mental health. So again, I want to thank you for honoring us. Today I have with me, if I could take just one short minute, I have Miss Eileen Smith with me today, who's my deputy of the CSB, and I'm also fortunate to have our assistant chair, Ms. Linda Bright, here as well with us. So thank you again for your acknowledgement.
Thank you for all that you do. I will now read the bids that we have received for the lease of city property proposed Pier project. The lease of city property Gray Pier project pursuant to Code Section 15.2-2102. The chair will now summarize the bids that have been received for a proposed lease of a portion of city-owned property located between 5th and 40th Streets, extending from the boardwalk easterly to the eastern boundary of city-owned property in the Atlantic Ocean, and being approximately 250 feet wide, north and south. 3 bids have been received as follows. A, the City of Virginia Beach Development Authority, a political subdivision of the Commonwealth of Virginia, has bid a 40-year lease term, rent of $1 per year, and the authority proposes to partner with a developer of City Council's choosing to facilitate a pier project. B, Sea Escape Corporation, Virginia Beach VAB 315 Oceanfront LLC, SYN Sen Hotel LLC, and Roland Court LLC have bid. Construct new pier at 17th Street with associated hotel, timeshare, park, retail, and public parking. And C, Virginia Beach Pier Place Development LLC has bid 40-year lease term, rent of $1 per year. Construct new pier at 15th Street with associated hotel, retail, a park plaza, and public parking. Are there any other persons desiring to submit a bid at this time? There being no further bids, the bidding is closed. The staff will evaluate the bids that have been received and make its recommendations to the City Council concerning the proposed lease at a future meeting. Now go to the public hearings. the purchase, the item J1, which is purchase agreement for an acquisition of ARP 4021 Charity Neck Road and Gum Bridge Road. Do we have any speakers, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Ree Greenman.
Good evening, Mayor Jones, members of City Council. I rise tonight as a citizen representing myself on this issue. I find it very interesting as I study the Agricultural Reserve Program as a policy, and I listen to Councilwoman Henley describe it as a success and the vision for preserving the rural flavor of our city south of the Green Line. And I look at it in the context of what you're doing tonight with the budget, which is determining what your priorities are based on how we're going to spend money in our CIP and spend the tax dollars that we provide to you. And after reviewing the ARP program and looking at all of it and the concept of zoning, I realized that that's probably no longer something that we need to do. After attending ODU's training on sea level rise and including the changes in the climate, much of this land that is being placed under this can't be developed because as the new maps are drawn under the new models, it will in fact be wetlands and floodlands. So I think perhaps the purpose of this has been outlived, and its sense of priorities is we should rethink this ARP program. The optics are, to many of us, it appears like wealthy landowners are provided money not to develop their property for a set amount of time and actually receive cash for that, at the detriment of those monies being available to take care of issues such as flooding in our city, other higher priorities. So my comments to you tonight on the ARP are this. Barbara, it was a good idea at one time, and I understand what we were trying to accomplish. But the reality is that time has come and passed. And I think that in your budget tonight, it was a mistake not to redirect those ARP funds to higher priority flooding issues, and Mr. Hanson to expedite those projects to keep water out of people's homes, rather than to continue with spending money and capital on something that's not achieving those higher priority goals. And so with that, I say thank you, and I understand that these comments probably won't make any difference, but I just want you to consider that in the future. Thank you.
Any other speakers on the purchase agreement?
No other speakers.
All right, now declare a public hearing on the license of city property adjacent to 31 Ocean, 241 Laskin Road.
No speakers, sir.
No speakers? All right, I'll declare a public hearing on the sale of excess city property, 1888 Virginia Beach Boulevard, and adjacent lot.
No speakers.
We'll now go to the consent agenda. Vice Mayor Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I move for approval under the consent agenda under ordinances, item K1, ordinance to authorize the acquisition of agricultural land preservation ARP easements from Chaplain Charity Neck Farm LC at 4021 Charity Neck Road, and B, Gumbridge Road, noting that Mr. Moss is voting nay. Item K2, ordinance to authorize the city manager to execute a license agreement with Starbucks Corporation for the use of 50 square feet of city property regarding outdoor seating area adjacent to 31 Ocean at 241 Laskin Road. Item K3, ordinance to declare the property located at 1888 Virginia Beach Boulevard and adjoining lot to be in excess of the city's need, and authorize the city manager to sell the property to Jones at 1888 LLC. Item K4, ordinance to authorize temporary encroachments into a portion of city property known as Harbor Canal located at 2336 Spindrift Road regarding maintaining existing dock and construct a boat lift. Item K6, ordinance to appropriate item A, $169,490 in additional aid to localities funding and transfer $255,977 in aid to localities funding regarding the fire department. Item K7, ordinance to add section 5-311 to the city code regarding pet shops that sell dogs, requested by Councilmember Davenport. Declare public hearing for planning.
I'd like to declare a public hearing for planning.
Under planning, item M1,
Zaldi VR and James Paul VR for a variance to section 4.4, paragraph B of the subdivision regulations regarding lot width at 1225 General Street, District 2, Kempsville. Item M3, Willis Family Partnership for a change of nonconformity, rate reduction of 10 legally nonconforming units at 318 and 320 34th Street, and that's consent for deferral to 6/5/18. Item M4, Waves Motel Incorporated for a conditional use permit regarding a parking lot at 1312 Atlantic Avenue, District 6, The Beach. And item M5, which is Jones at 1888 LLC in the city of Virginia Beach for a conditional use permit regarding bulk storage yard at 1888 Virginia Beach Boulevard and adjacent parcel. So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If not, the vote is open.
By a vote of 9-0, you have approved the consent agenda as read by Vice Mayor Wood, noting the nay vote of Mr. Moss.
Thank you. I'm going to go down to the budget items before we do the other items, and open a public hearing on the fiscal year 2018-19 Resource Management Plan, on the ordinances to support the capital budget, and on the ordinances to support the planning operating budget. Do we have any speakers, Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir. The first speaker is Cheryl Ward, and after Mrs. Ward will be Jonathan Pope.
Hi, Cheryl Ward, 3257 Indian Creek Road in the Blackwater Borough. Good evening, Mayor Jones, Vice Mayor Wood, and council members. I am Cheryl Ward from the Independence Center. The Independence Center serves residents of Virginia Beach who have disabilities. I am also here as the parent of a young adult with a disability who has been a lifelong resident of Virginia Beach. I have been a resident for 53 years. I thank you for this opportunity to give you information on the needs of people with disabilities in our community and share how you can be instrumental in improving their future by continuing your support for our center and the services it provides. The term Center for Independent Living, or CIL, means a consumer-controlled, community-based, cross-disability, non-residential, private nonprofit agency that is designed and operated within a local community by individuals with disabilities and provides an array of independent living services such as training, counseling, and referral. CILs serve people without regard to the type or severity of their disability, a person's age, or a person's income. We offer 5 core services as direct services: peer counseling, information and referral, individual and systems advocacy, independent living skills training, and services that facilitate transition from nursing homes and other institutions to the community, provide assistance to those at risk of entering institutions, and we facilitate transition of youth to post-secondary life. The Independence Center also provides advocacy services, ensuring that Virginia Beach citizens with disabilities have opportunities for independent living as defined by their civil and human rights. We also work to find available resources for people with disabilities that allows them to avoid institutionalization and live in the community in the same way that most of us do. Community integration is part of the independent living philosophy that the Independent Center follows. Housing opportunities and referrals and Social Security benefits help in the transition area for young adults who have left school but still need assistance in order to be successful in the community. At this time, we are able to provide all these services without a wait list. Our participants set goals for independent living that they strive to achieve, goals to obtain housing, employment, and further education. These goals direct the focus of our participants on targets of success. CILs play a vital role in helping people with all sorts of disability live the life they desire. Virginia Beach City Council has recognized and contributed to improving the lives of Virginia Beach citizens with disabilities. Thank you for your long-standing record of support for the Independence Center and the work we do on behalf of Virginia Beach residents with disabilities.
Thank you.
Jonathan Pope, and after Mr. Pope will be Michelle Riley. Jonathan Pope.
There's a microphone right.
There's a microphone right on the side of the
On the left side.
lectern here.
Yeah, that's low. That's a lower height.
On the other side of the podium.
On this side, Mr. Pope.
On this side.
Closer
Right here.
to us.
Left side.
On our side.
Behind it.
So actually, we are both Mr. Pope.
Uh,
I'm Jonathan's dad, and he didn't have anything planned to say, but he did come here to represent the Independence Center and talk about, if you want to share all the wonderful things that the Independence Center provide to the community and our family. And we're actually glad to have it. We appreciate your wonderful, outstanding support. And Jonathan goes there daily, routinely. He sees some of the most wonderful people. It's very inclusive, allows him to function on a daily basis. And we're extremely happy that we have you all support to do that. So I wasn't expecting to say anything. I brought Jonathan here today to say what he wanted to say, but I took advantage of this opportunity. So Jonathan, you got anything you want to share? There's your mic right there.
I've been with the Independence Center for a long time, and we have services and things to do.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
All right, here.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Next speaker.
Michelle Riley. And after Mrs. Riley is Becky Culpepper.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Riley, and I live in the Little Neck area of our city. I'm hoping tonight that this board will vote in favor of the alternate budget plan proposed by council members Moss, Abbott, and Dyer, although I disagree that we need a field house right now. I noticed while looking at Mr. Hansen's budget that there is no mention of adding additional funding for more snowplows or other means of clearing our roads during weather events. I realize with summer upon us, the last thing on everyone's mind is snow, but I think it's worth remembering that in January, Virginia Beach's approximately 70,000 students missed 5.5 days of school due to impassable roads. 15 minutes were added to each school day from February 11th to May 4th to make up this time, a situation that could have been prevented had we been better prepared. I'm baffled by the priorities of this council. How can you propose spending over $225 million on oceanfront projects in an attempt to rebrand Virginia Beach as a year-long tourist destination if we can't even manage to keep our schools and roads open during a snow event? I would hope that the year-long residents of Virginia Beach and their safety would take precedence over people who only come here to enjoy our beach. We need snow plows, not another snow job. Thank you.
Becky Culpepper. And after Mrs. Culpepper will be Janet Zaritsky.
Hello, I am Becky Culpepper, and I live at 4004 Atlantic Avenue in the Oceans condominium. And I'm here today to speak about the closing of Atlantic Avenue in particular, and I've got some points to make about that, 3 points. The Oceans will be the most impacted property on Atlantic Avenue when realignment occurs. We have worked with the city traffic planners for nearly 2 years to find a solution that will provide something for everyone. A street which is accessible by emergency services vehicles, a quiet street for us with adequate ingress and egress from our garage, businesses, and parking for our 2 neighborhood restaurants. The Ocean sent a letter of conditional support in December of 2016, which Mr. Hansen frequently mentions. However, To this date, the conditions we asked for, including safe access to our building, keeping cyclists off the west side of the street due to our bad sight lines exiting the garage, it's a safety issue, and no parking on Atlantic due to ability to stage fire and rescue efforts of a 20-story building with 224 units, which means if you double it, 500 and some residents. Thus far, the conditions have not been satisfactorily met. The owners of the Oceans have recently heard from two completely independent sources that the plan for realignment of Atlantic Avenue had drastically changed from the 30% plan we were last shown in April. The plan was described to an owner, April of 2017. The plan was described to an owner by the project manager of Virginia Beach office as having 2 cut-out cul-de-sacs. The main driveway to the hotels and beach club would be on Atlantic rather than from the Grand Lawn entrance from Pacific. We were presented the past 2 years. It's a big change. It went from a 30% plan we could see to a 90% plan we have not seen nor had any chance to make a comment or have input. It feels like our input is not being listened to. You have an excess of a $2.7 million driveway for the Cavalier, which is being paid for by taxpayer monies, so that now instead of light deliveries, they can have garbage trucks and 18-wheelers in our front yard. That's all. Thank you.
Janet Zerzitsky, I'm sorry. And then Barbara Messner. Mess that all up. Sorry.
Good evening. I'm Janet Zaritsky. I live at 4004 Atlantic Avenue, the Oceans. And I'm asking tonight for you to defer your vote on the capital improvement plan 138, this document here that we've received today on the internet. The description and scope are vague. The purpose and need are ill-defined. The project map is confusing. Who decides the scope? Who decides if the purpose has been met? Does it come back to you, the city council, or is that left to the judgment of a city official? Mr. Hanson has graciously accepted our invitation to come to speak to the Oceans tomorrow night, and we're very grateful for that. We hope that any of you who are willing to attend would also come. It's at 6 p.m. at the Oceans. But your vote is today. So we're asking you to defer, not to vote no, not to vote yes, just to defer until we have more facts. You have more facts and we have more facts. Thank you.
Barbara Messner. And after Ms. Messner will be Reed Greenman.
Good evening, and welcome to Deputy City Attorney Ingram. It's nice to see you up here. I was shocked, literally shocked. I mean, this alternative budget, I call it the MAD, Moss, Abbott, Dyer, it failed to cut billions. Y'all had an opportunity to cut billions of waste, including $190 million for the new parking garage, sports center. The wave does not even work. The only artificial wave that works is the one Kelly Slater has. And now the developers venture are asking for a deferral for 7 months till after the election. Okay, those are our parking lots, municipal parking lots. Most people know there's no real parking at the oceanfront. Why didn't any of y'all, try to cut some of the salaries of the people that make $250,000 plus $12,000 a year car allowance? Why didn't anybody offer to, because there's several millionaires here, why haven't any of y'all offered not to take your salaries and to donate it to our police? I don't think anybody said anything about the police today, but most of us greatly appreciate everything they do, and they work a lot of overtime. I've asked Mr. Moss and Ms. Abbott for over 2 years about the $78 million for the arena, since it was, they finally, canceled the contract. That $78 million should be infrastructure for us. And, the Virginia Beach Economic Development Authority doesn't make any money. I don't see why it should be funded. And Mr. Moss, you know that several people, including Mr. Levinson, I forget all the people, have conflicts. And I'm also curious on the lack of due process on so many of these things. The bid on the pier, that was kind of hidden. It wasn't clarified what it was. And there was a $12,000 a year offer by the Wool Supply Company. There's no reason that couldn't be accepted. Leasing the land for only $1 a year is not in the best interest of the citizens. Thank you.
Reed Greenman. And then after Mr. Greenman will be Christopher Naughton.
Good evening again, Mayor Jones and City Council. I'd like to reiterate that I recognize that nothing that I say tonight or anyone else here is going to make any difference, because I'd like to talk a little about 3 Ps tonight. And those are the process, the priorities, and the public, not public-private partnerships. This entire budgeting process is flawed. This is a public hearing tonight where you're supposed to be listening to us to give you guidance on how to make your decisions on how to spend our money and direct those resources on the CIP. When I called tonight to speak on the numerous ordinances and information that you're voting on many, many complex issues, I was told, no, I'm sorry, Mr. Greenman, you can't speak on each agenda item. You can only speak for 3 minutes on the entire $2 billion budget and CIP. Now, I don't know what input I can provide you in 3 minutes on a $2 billion budget. So that's kind of absurd. And it's your process. This packet says I'm allowed to sign up and speak on each agenda item, but I'm told by the clerk that I'm not. Just 3 minutes for a $2 billion budget. We can do better. Councilman Dyer has been talking about the need for an improved budget process, and he's right. I have actually read the CIP in the budget, this big. But I don't have enough time to share with you my wisdom tonight because this process doesn't work. Priorities, I've been here enough to tell you, place needs before wants. I can summarize it. I could go down the list just as Ms. Mesner did of ill-advised economic development processes. I appreciate this. Again, I only have 3 minutes. You put out this wonderful information, and I read this. However, all of this is wrong now because in your reconciliation process, almost nothing on this is correct. The other thing that's not on this information sheet is it doesn't break out anything to show us how much we spend on oceanfront tourism investment versus the rest of anything. It's just hidden in these graphs, and it is not mentioned. As others have told you, debt is going to kill us. And yet here you are again approving more debt. It's borrow and spend, borrow and, we're not paying the pensions. We're going to come in a case where we're going to be bankrupt one day because we've never changed our behaviors. And I see I'm almost out of time. So I would reiterate the comments, Mr. Hansen, of another speaker. Really hard out there when it's 78 degrees. But this entire city was shut down for 5 days due to snow, and I couldn't even go to work. I had to walk to the store in the freezing cold. My car, when I tried to get out, was stranded in the street, and it took 4 people just to push it back in my driveway. That's insane. Yet there's nothing in this budget to address those types of issues, and I'm sorry, I see my time has expired. So please consider improving your process so we can give you better input and we can all work together to make better decisions. Thank you.
Christopher Naughton. And after Mr. Naughton is Diana Howard.
Good evening, Mayor Jones, City Council. My name is Christopher Naughton. I'm a business owner here in Virginia Beach, and I live at the Oceans Condominiums at 40th and Atlantic. And I've been there for 20 years. And of course, as you're well aware, we are right in the middle of the Cavalier Oceanfront Development Project, both to the east and the north, and the old Cavalier property across Pacific to the west. And we've been kept apprised of earlier prospective plans, Plan A and B, to close and realign Atlantic, and our board voted, as you heard earlier, a conditional acceptance of that back in November of 2016. And tomorrow night, we will be meeting with City Manager David Hanson. He'll be presenting an update. However, an item that you folks may be voting on tonight could render some of our concerns and points moot. So let me just raise just a couple of issues quickly here. On the letter from Mayor Jones and Vice Mayor Wood, dated May the 9th, and since revised the 2018 operating budget and SIP reconciliation, there was an item 24A submitted by City Manager David Hanson, the Atlantic Avenue reconfiguration, about the acquisition of necessary property and easements to be authorized limited to current funding appropriated. Does that mean 40th and Pacific, or does it mean 41st, where the proposed cul-de-sac intersects with the park area, or does it mean both? The question I think we need to ask the city is, if the city does get the money to close off Atlantic, we wonder, by your vote tonight, does it authorize another version or another redesign? So the question is, do redesigns or revisions come before this body, this council, or are they the sole provenance of the city manager's office? Thank you for your time. Thank you for your service.
Diana Howard. And after Mrs. Howard, be Gary Hubbard.
Good evening, everyone. I'm speaking for the Virginia Beach Taxpayer Alliance and the Virginia Beach Tea Party tonight. I'm the chair of the Tea Party. I'm on the board of the Virginia Beach Taxpayer Alliance. Marlena cannot be here tonight. So we supported the MAD, Moss Abbott Dyer budget, and one of the reasons we did was because it addressed our core responsibilities of government for public safety and for infrastructure, where the city council had just voted to study the issue of compression. They decided that they would address it with $6 million. And although this compromise budget is only given $3 million, I'm hoping that the retention team does help in keeping our safety personnel that risk their lives for us every day. Also, it had $7 million more in flooding, and it didn't cut any personnel at all, and it didn't increase any taxes, so I'm at a loss as to why we're cutting that funding here. I know the city manager said that we can't do it because we don't have dedicated funding source for it, but I disagree, okay? We are getting a 1.93 cent real estate tax equivalent in our real estate assessment. Why couldn't you have put part of that over into stormwater to fund those positions? Why couldn't you have taken some of the 45 positions that are not filled in a year or over a year now, 119 not filled in over a month? I'm sure some of them are irrelevant or not as important as maybe some of those positions, and replace them with those. Or how about, like, last year you put in 34 mosquito control people under stormwater. Let's see, Public Works funded under real estate taxes. Stormwater funded under a fee. You moved mosquito control from being funded under taxes to being funded by a fee. That's over $2 million a year for that. And you move that back to Public Works, or take away some of those and replace them with those stormwater people. Can that be done? So, anyway. So some of the recommendations that we had didn't get included in here, but they don't require an ordinance. A debt clock being put on the website, we proposed that. Online checking, and just a better process, as Reed Greenman already mentioned. Also, this probably does require something. Amusement tax. We're all tourists here. We live here all year long. We pay that tax. So it shouldn't go to the tip fund. We should either not pay it or we should get half of it. So it just is unfortunate that we don't have 6 votes here that put the priorities of our infrastructure, our neighborhoods, over tourism. It speaks volumes.
Gary Hubbard. And after Mr. Hubbard will be Virginia Wasserberg.
Good evening, Councilman, Mayor. I'd like to make a couple of statements. My name is Gary Hubbard. I'm a Navy veteran. I'm a small business owner, commercial and residential construction. What I'd like to do is propose in the permits and zoning to increase the adequate storm drainage that they're just doing minimum now. And also with the taxes and the fees that we have elderly, we have senior citizens, we have disabled that live on fixed budgets. And I believe we can change our priorities on the budgets. We've heard from everybody on the budget. We've heard about different priorities. But what we haven't heard is flooding. It's either paving now or paving later. So we need to address the old infrastructure. Concrete and steel doesn't last forever. Concrete and pavement doesn't percolate. So where are we going to do this? Where are we going to get rid of this water? The city of Virginia Beach wants a sports center. I'm for development. I'm for sane development. I'm for each deal, each job, each one to stand on its own merits. I'm looking for a return on the investment. I'm not looking to pay for an investment. These wealthy developers are not broke. You know, leasing property, that would be a great deal. There's quite a few things that we need to change, especially as budget deals. You know, flooding is real, climate change is real, sea level rise is real. The snow problems that we have are due to climate change. This is not going to get any better. It's going to get worse. So we need to address the holding ponds, the drainage ditches. 15-year plan for flood control will not work. When we were out doing construction and everything, and you proposed a weir system for 100 years, that's no longer viable anymore. What we're doing, we're not increasing adequate storm drainage. We're, you know, the city itself is a vibrant city, you know, and we're looking to drag it to the 21st century, kicking and screaming. We need better internet and broadband access. We need better mass transit. We need to actually address the flooding controls and the budget deals, and sports arenas are fine if it can be funded by itself, which it cannot. We need to know if we've actually got a demand for this. There's a lot of cities that put up sports arenas that there's just not a demand for, and then, you know, they lay vacant and dormant. So we need to actually address this. The budget figures, you all know the budget figures. I'm looking for a little bit of fiduciary responsibility to the citizens of Virginia Beach. Not everybody can go to the backyard and pick out a money tree. And I thank you for your time.
Virginia Wasserberg. And after Mrs. Wasserberg will be Mrs. Marsh.
Good evening. Congratulations, Mr. Jones, on your appointment to mayor. I just wanted to say that I created Stop the Flooding Now in March of 2017, and as of the past 28 days, we've reached about 15,000 people, actually over 15,000 people. And I think that speaks very loudly that this city is very concerned about our issues of flooding and sea level rise. And Mr. Hanson, I'm disappointed that CIP on sea level rise and reoccurrent flooding has $0 for the next 6 years. And I'm very disappointed that this council couldn't figure out a way to put something in there for it. Because we just did 7 sea level rise forums the past 6 months, and they prove that our southern watershed is going to be underwater, and the very conservative estimate would be 1.5 feet by 2040, and the high is going to be about 3 feet by 2070. And, you know, I lived in Sandbridge for 2 months when my house was flooded, and I like Sandbridge, and I want to see it exist in 2070, because I'm going to be alive in 2070, hopefully. So I want to see it there. But the problem is that when it comes to our debt and our businesses, I see it going hand in hand with flooding and sea level rise, because our neighbors Norfolk and Portsmouth and Hampton, they're doing something about it. Norfolk has a whole plan that they see themselves as a coastal community for the future. We don't have anything like that. Portsmouth has a strategic plan for a new plan on resilience. And Hampton is planning for sea level rise and resilience right now. But Virginia Beach's budget has 0 for sea level rise. It is very, very important. The science is real. I don't care who you are. It's real. I've worked with Dr. Michelle Covey from ODU. I attended as many of those sea level rise forums as I could. Mr. Hansen even kind of laughed at me in the hallway because of it. You're here again? Yes, I'm here again because I believe in it, and I know that we need to do something about it. And when we're going to spend $89 million in debt for our oceanfront resort, then by golly, we better spend some money to protect it. So, you know, we have this that says we flood and we vote. And a lot of you are up for re-election, and we're watching to see if you're going to do something about it. So please, delay that CIP vote today, and let's figure out something to do about it. I know that your charter says you have to vote by a certain time frame, but you guys have had since March to figure this out. So we're watching you guys to see what happens tonight. Thank you.
Mrs. Marsh?
Good evening. I'm Mrs. Marsh. I reside in the Bayside District. Mr. Jones is my representative, and I have been here before and talked to you about debt. I am here to talk to you tonight about the CIP. And I am asking you to defer your vote on the CIP because I think we can do better, Mr. Hansen. It's very disappointing that the largest amount in the CIP is for tourism. Tourism is the #1 largest item. It gets $89 million. More important than anything else on here. More important than schools at 59, more important than roadways at 80 million, more important than buildings are 80 million, and that's the new city hall because we've got a $50 million city hall that we're replacing. More important than parks and recs, utilities, stormwater gets 12 million. 89 million for tourism. That is our biggest and most important thing, and we already have appropriated in a stockpile, I believe, 135 million. Now, I don't know where that all came from, if it came from the arena, but we are going to put $225 million into a floodplain that backs up to the ocean and can be flooded. There are studies that show we can have 1 to 2 to 3 feet of sea level rise. And what are you going to do when you have a sports arena that has water in it? You know, we have people, Ms. Wilson, who are pushing for an entertainment district, who want some kind of entertainment venue, maybe for their new hotel. Is that really the best use of our tax dollars? I brought tonight a page from the CAFR. You put this in every single CAFR, and it says that the citizens are at the top of the org chart. Everyone should know that we are supposed to be the people that are in charge here. It is not supposed to be Mr. Hansen, who has put together a rather pathetic CIP. Now, I don't know if this was driven by someone on this board, but we can do better. And I'm asking you to delay this vote because we need to really reevaluate once a stormwater report comes out. It's imminent. And if you can get some clarification that it's not going to flood and you're not going to just put $225 million underwater, then maybe we would feel better. But I'd actually really like to see the money go to Centerville because Centerville has higher ground. Let's not put all this money in this, of this value at the ocean front and have it go away. You all are not thinking like what we citizens want you to think like, and we're not doing well because our city is dead last in generating new jobs. We are not a city that people are coming to or want to be working at. So we need to make some changes, and I'm asking you to defer because that would be a better use of our funds if we could reevaluate and use them wisely. Thank you.
Mike Maskell. And after Mr. Maskell is Philip Decker.
Thank you. Good evening. The budget proposed today continues to increase the city's overall debt burden to finance investments in amenities that are wants and not needs. Now, these investments do have certain financial returns that have been estimated. However, as with most investments, there's no guarantee that these estimates will be met. There's one kind of investment, however, that does have a calculatable and guaranteed return, and that's paying down the existing debt. The more we reduce our debt from current levels, the lower the debt service payments in subsequent years must be. This effectively places revenue into those future budgets. At a minimum, the city should compare the anticipated revenues of any potential investment to the reduction in future debt service payments that would result from spending that same money on paying down the debt instead. For example, the proposed budget takes money saved by canceling the arena project and reinvests it in other oceanfront projects, but what if instead we applied it to the debt? As another example, the city provided $5 million in special financing for the Cavalier. That has essentially been sold to the people as free money because it's to be repaid from taxes from the hotel. But it's not free money because until the Cavaliers manage to book enough rooms to repay it, we don't have that $5 million. During that time, we have the opportunity cost in the form of the interest we could have saved by putting that money towards debt. We don't know how the expected returns on those investments compare to the potential savings from paying down the debt because that analysis has not been performed. Without that information, there's no way to know if we're getting the most bang for our buck, so to speak. If we're going to tackle serious structural problems like flooding, our city can't afford to make financial decisions that are not fully informed as to the costs and benefits. I urge council to defer a vote on the budget until we have compared each of the proposed investments to the competing option of paying down the debt, lest we make mistakes that leave our city drowning in both water and debt. Thank you.
So that's all the speakers, sir. Mr. Decker is actually speaking on another item.
I'm sorry, say that again.
That's all the speakers for the budget. Mr. Decker is actually speaking on another item.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Wood?
Mr. Mayor, I move approval, item L, Reconciled Proposal, Subpart 1, ordinance to support the operating budget, items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16 is printed in the agenda. Under Subpart 2, ordinance to support the capital budget, ordinances 1, 2, 3, and 4 as printed in the agenda. Under Subpart 3, ordinance to support the planning operating budget, ordinances 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 is printed in the agenda. So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
I would. I'd just like to respond, if I could, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One thing I wanted to talk about the Atlantic Avenue, because the person asked what could the city manager do and not do, so I asked that question of the city attorney staff myself a couple days ago. I see the city attorney smiling, and this is what he wrote back. He said, "John, city manager does not have the authority to convey title to public property to prevent a private entity without council action." So that's one point. When the Commonwealth transfers to the property to the city, and that hasn't happened, it must either hold title or go to the city council to declare it excess after an advertised public hearing. So there's still more public participation. For the land that was used as a street, this requires a formal street closure process as well. That has not happened either. So that's the third check on what will happen, third chances. Similarly, even if used by a private entity without transferring title, it must still go to city council for approval for an encroachment agreement. So that would get to all these if there are additional access changes over what you thought was taking place, and hopefully the city manager will address a lot of that tomorrow night. The city manager does, however, have the authority to manage or change the use of any public property, such as converting a street to a sidewalk or a park, but it remains held in trust for the public until it is declared excess by the city council. So I think that's kind of important. I think the city manager is wise enough to realize the high interest item that this entails. I don't think he would be taking any kind of demonstrative action without briefing us first. But I just thought that was important to bring out. There was a couple things that I just wanted to. Making the budget is always difficult because there's 11 people up here who represent the city, who all get elected by you, the public, and all of us are listening to lots of voices. And it's unlike in Washington, we don't have gridlock here. We do find a way to find a middle ground and come to an agreement that we can work. Is it the best that any of us would like? I think the mayor said it well. No one got all they wanted, including me. But we all got some of what we wanted. And yes, I don't disagree that we have some debt issues. But in all fairness, when we go to solve this flooding problem, we are going to be issuing sometime in the future some debt. How we manage that debt will be key, and I understand the concerns that people raised. But in the end, we have to get a budget that we can get a majority to adopt, and everybody compromises a little bit. I don't call it appeasement. I think it was a true compromise, and I applaud the mayor for he is a maestro of finding the common ground. It's not as common as Ms. Marsh would like, and I do believe we could have found other things to cut other than those positions. But life isn't over, and there's a long time between the budget starts on 1 July and when it finishes on 30 June, so hopefully we can revisit that. But I don't want people to walk away thinking we didn't listen during those 2 public hearings, and I don't want you to think that all your messages that you sent for us didn't help us get to the compromise we got to. And we're just going to have to find some more room for negotiation over time, and I think we're going to be looking for those opportunities to do more for flooding. I do agree that's a high priority, but I do believe that everybody here gave a little bit to get to a unanimous budget. It's only the second time in 25 years that's happened, and I think the public benefits from that, even though we didn't get all that anyone wanted. And I do want to thank my fellow members for helping us get there, and I want to thank Bobby and Jessica for sticking with on the MAD budget. It wasn't as mad as it sounded, but I enjoyed putting it together with Bobby and Jessica, and I appreciate their hard work, but I also appreciate the hard work of everybody else coming together to get a unanimous vote. I appreciate it very much.
Ms. App.
I prepare my remarks these days because I can't remember everything. I just want to say I'm appreciative that my colleagues and I were able to come together to achieve a compromise on voting for our operating and CIP budget. Holding the line on eliminating the proposed tax and fee increases is crucial to maintaining the quality of life for thousands of Virginia Beach families. It reflects the economic reality and priorities of the household budgets of many residents. Many of us have experienced stagnant wages and have needed to learn to live within our means, and the city must not take that lesson for granted. I'd also like to point out that tax and fee increases do not sting us all equally, and that we must be mindful of creating a financial environment that can actually sustain a community for a lifetime, for everyone. Hearing the stories of several Virginia Beach families struggling with maintaining their family's financial solvency in the face of rising costs of living and ballooning taxes and budgets, or taxes and fees, was the motivation of my personal willingness to reach a compromise on the CIP budget. I'm also appreciative that we are able to begin to fund a solution to pay compression for public safety professionals who are very deserving of our support on council. This compromise is the result of healthy competition in defining the role of our local government. Competition in government and promoting the diversity of ideas is paramount to the success of any political body and truly representing the priorities of our constituency. A marketplace of ideas coupled with a transparent budget process and eliciting the insight of Virginia Beach residents is a recipe for better engagement and a more positive result in the future. I am grateful that we are able to take and give our ideas and work as a team for the betterment of all who have invested in the success of the city. I believe that all of us here want the same thing in our community: career opportunities, safe neighborhoods, great schools, and a quality of life. But I would also like to note, moving forward, I urge council to seriously re-examine our role in this community. Like families across the city that we represent, we must put our needs before our wants. We must be more aggressive in mitigating the effects of stormwater in this vulnerable region. We must be frugal in allocating taxpayer debt to fund projects and be mindful of overborrowing. We must come to terms that our region is desperately lagging behind other communities in our state and in our country in economic growth, and we must take strides to further diversify our economy. I'm very thankful to my colleagues that we were able to reach an agreement, and that I believe that this is a success in providing some relief from the increased taxes and fees. I simply want to clarify that my vote in support of the CI budget is not because I agree with all of its contents, but because of the merits of adopting our revised operating budget is a great opportunity for securing the financial well-being of our city. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Ms. Wilson.
I would like for our attorney to tell everyone why it's very important for us to vote tonight on this budget.
Very important because by state law, the schools have to have their budget approved, and that is a big part of this budget.
And if we don't vote tonight?
That's problematic. Yes.
So it's very critical. for us not to defer.
Exactly.
Anybody else? If not, the vote is open.
By a vote of 9-0, you have approved the budget. Subpart 1, 2, and 3, ordinances to support the operating capital and planning operating budget.
Thank you very much, council, for that vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for negotiating.
I will now go to first ordinances that we need to hear speakers on. Item K5, which is an ordinance to amend the adopted fiscal year 2017-18 capital improvement program project description and scope for Lake Management 2 SW infrastructure rehabilitations and improvements 2 and primary system infrastructure improvements, and authorize the acquisition of necessary property and easements. We have a speaker, Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir. E. George Mims is the first, and Andrew Jackson is the second.
Good evening, council. Mayor, E. George Mims for the record. On second thought, I don't know which way this thing's going this evening, but anyway. I rise in a constitutional concern with regards to stormwater. I'm thinking K ordinance involves stormwater.
Yes, sir.
Because it wasn't until I saw Ashview Park on the television and I looked at the agenda that led me to then discover that there'd been discussion and planning for improvements in stormwater since December 2016. Unfortunately, in SeaTac, we were totally misled. We've had a problem in SeaTac concerning the flooding of homes on Clarissa and Brooklyn. We have tried to deal with the city. I've been in office now, and I'm going into my 9th year. At least for the past, I know it's over 5. Without going back looking at the files, I wouldn't know exactly how long, but it's been going on at least good 5, 6 years that we've been trying to get something done with those 2 areas. Distinctively, we were led to believe that the city does not do anything after a development has been built. And there's a BMP in there, holding pond, detention ponds. In the case of Clarissa, in the case of Brooklyn, I was later educated by the city when I questioned why the city was making Mount Olive Baptist Church clean the BMP there. The city made the distinction that if the BMP holding pond only serves that private lot, is private. But if the BMP holding pond for storm water, if water is coming from a city street into it, then it is public. Both of the ones at Clarissa and the one at Brooklyn in SeaTac are both receiving stormwater from a development. And as they say, the time that they give you to speak is so small, I don't even see where free speech even exists anymore. But at any rate, the homeowners of both locations are here tonight. I would ask that you include SeaTac in any stormwater improvement. I submitted my concerns in writing because of this choking of free speech. Thank you.
Mr. Andrew Jackson, and after Mr. Jackson will be Kurt Clark.
Good evening, Mayor Jones, Vice Mayor Wood, council members. Let me just start off by acknowledging that our city leadership tends to continue the use of the greatest city in the world. I looked up greatest, and we won't go into all of that, but I am of the opinion that this city operates on a comprehensive plan, and that plan is required by the General Assembly. So I look at it from that point of view, and I look at what Virginia Beach, how they've responded, and it says that it has certain desired outcomes, and there was 5 listed in the comprehensive plan. I just picked one of them. 3. We want Virginia Beach to be a city whose public services and facilities work to satisfy the needs of our citizens. I worked also on, about a year, on the SFA part of the comprehensive plan, where CTAC became number 9 to be included in that. And so I just want to say a couple things. I noticed here when I looked at this, it says that once the plan has been adopted, the plan has legal standing as per section 15.2-2232. And I say that because when I worked on that SFA and it became part of the comprehensive plan, it was voted on here in this body, and it had some bullet points there that became part of that plan, and some of them were read it out and red line, but let me just read a couple of these. It says that development should be designed such as site drainage and stormwater management that does not negatively impact parcels. It also said maintain stormwater facilities and retrofit existing drainage system problem areas. And I don't see where that's been budgeted to do anything on CTAX, and they have not been included at all. And there's some problems there that are not short-term, they're long-term. I don't know why that has not happened, but that's up to council. You all can answer that question, I can't. But I don't understand why several things have come before this council over my time coming here. And they always seem to have a negative impact on that community. I'm just saying, let you all make a choice. Thank you.
Kurt Clark, and after Mr. Clark is Elder Donnie Gregory.
Good evening, council. Kurt Clark, 1000 Carissa Court. This is my 3rd time here addressing this. I think one time was indirect with a new business that was coming into our community. For me, Councilman Aaron, 2011-12 came to my property to see exactly the BMP issue in regards to the plan that was approved, some of the challenges that I had. I moved into this area as a veteran, stationed at Oceana, and I retired from Oceana, and I love Virginia Beach. This is my home. One of my biggest challenges right now, and I'm going back from 2012, 2018, and it started beyond 2012. One of my challenges right now is when I come out of my backyard and see this system that services the community, and I have a 4-month-old granddaughter, and I also have an 8-year-old grandson, and I'm thinking about their future, and I'm thinking about the times, the emails, the different responses, correspondence that has been going back and forth to try to figure how can we fix this, how can we make it happen. And then to find out recently that there's been a plan in place to deal with stormwater management. And I'm sitting here just trying to keep my composure and be that professional individual that I am. It's sunset, best way I can put it. Unless I'm missing something, unless I'm misinformed, if it's the media, fake news, whatever it may be, and they're addressing some of the things that are coming on, and we're being misled, then maybe that's the case. But when it's all said and done, I go back to my granddaughter, my grandson, and I think about my service to my nation. I think about the individuals that looked at me to do my job, to go out there and protect and defend this country. I expect the same from individuals, if it's the planning office, if it's the city council, to do the best they can for us, do what's right for us, to take care of us. And if, to what the lady said earlier, in regards to the pecking order, where we are the citizens and you work for us, it didn't feel that way, it doesn't feel that way. So I would like for us to be added to this plan, and I would definitely like a sense of urgency in regards to taking care of not just my issues, but the other issues that arise from stormwater, from planning, from some of the stuff that's being approved that affect our communities, that can affect my granddaughter and my grandson. So I thank you for your time. Thank you.
Elder Donnie Gregory.
Donnie Gregory. I'm a lifelong resident of Virginia Beach. I just retired in January of 36 years and 10 months with the federal government. And I'm here tonight to talk about one thing in specific, and that is this retention pond that exists in my backyard. I'll give you this illustration. The size of this room is the size of the pond. That wall is my back door. I walk out of my back door, the only usable space I have is where you're sitting, and maybe a little bit in the front, that's all. I would like for this thing to be moved or relocated. Over the years, my wife and I, we've been living there since '96. It's 3 types of snake that occupy this pond: a moccasin, a black snake, and a king snake that over time I know I've killed over 60. And my wife, who is here, I know when I close my eyes, she's not going to live there anymore. But it's heirloom to me because it was given by my grandfather. Now, I'm learning as I go along because I've been busy working for 36 years, that I retired now. And this is the farthest that I can come out of my back door is where you sitting to enjoy everything else that's a ditch for the rest of the development. And beyond that is where I own. And I can't get to it because the city says that it's got to be theirs for easement. It don't make sense to me. Relocate it, make the thing more compact, and give me some of my yard so I can enjoy my family and my wife, and we can enjoy ourselves on this beautiful lot. And I don't plan to move nowhere. I'm not trying to get out of Virginia Beach. I had many opportunities. I settled here because I love here. But you got the power. You can move that thing. And you wouldn't have it in your backyard. And look, this is my first time coming forth because I've been working all my life. And this ain't no buffoonery. I'm not up here as no Sam sucker or something like that. I'm here for facts, and you wouldn't have that in your backyard with your kids running out there. Snakes don't know, and snakes been all in my garage. I look to my left, I can't go left, I can't go right, I can't go forward in my backyard. And I'm not exaggerating. Some of your officials have just come out there and sinkholes. This thing ain't working. You got sinkholes and potholes up there around the thing and all. And help me out. Move this thing. Relocate this thing. Take it in your backyard. Thank you very much.
That's all the speakers, sir.
All
I
right.
think Mr. Hanson was taking some notes then.
I got it.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
You might want to check on that, Mr. Hanson.
Right.
Thank you.
can I move for approval on item K5, ordinance to amend the adopted FY 27-18 capital improvement project, description and scope for Lake Management 2, stormwater infrastructure rehabilitations and improvements 2, and primary system infrastructure improvements 2, and authorize the acquisition of necessary property and easements.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and second. Any discussion?
I have a
Yes.
question.
Yes. Get Ms. Kane first.
Thank you, Mayor. If we pass this tonight, I know you're taking notes, Mr. Hanson, but what does that mean? Can we go back and fix things for some of these concerns? What does this mean if we pass this tonight in relation to their concerns?
This provides us access to some of the lakes for our lake management dredging program that we've been working on, our 50 top lakes. That's what this ordinance is. Mr. Clark, Mr. Gregory's issue, we've looked at this. I will get the history, dispatched an email while we were sitting here to the Director of Public Works and his team. I'll get the history of this. We'll relook it. It's not unknown to us. I recall back in 2012,
meeting with Mr. Clark and having a conversation about this. So I just need to get my finger on the pulse and figure out what has or what can be done.
Mr. Moss?
I just wanted to provide, since we are adopting three things, I thought it would be nice just to tell the public what, in fact, we did vote to do, or are going to vote to do. One of them is lake maintenance, and that's an additional almost $5 million in 19. That would be reflected in the CIP we just adopted. I believe that's correct.
On lake maintenance.
Yes, I think that's correct. And the other one deals with helping do the analysis and do the contracts so we can do ditch maintenance, which we have a 12-year backlog on. I just thought people needed to know what we were voting to do. And the other one is rehabilitation in specific neighborhoods, Strawbridge, Hunt Club Forest, Kings Grant, Magic Hollow, Fairfield, around the neighborhood, around the city, different rehabilitation renovation projects. So I want to let people know that there are, what we actually are voting to do is things that are on the ground, actual concrete improvements.
All right, any further comments or discussion? If not, the vote is open.
By a vote of 9-0, you have approved the ordinance to amend the FY 17-18 CIP project.
All right, the next item is item K6B, which is $700,000 to the Virginia Beach Development Authority Ray Commonwealth Opportunity Fund Award.
Reed Grayman.
Good evening, Mayor Jones, members of City Council. I tried to oil the squeaky door.
Thank you.
And hopefully it'll stop making noise. I'm here this evening to talk about the entire concept of the Virginia Beach Development Authority and this $700,000. I recognize that the Virginia General Assembly created a political subdivision, but in effect, it's simply a bond laundering purpose and a way to transfer money that we buy of city property over to this all-appointed, non-elected body who is rogue. And I think you as a body need to go to the General Assembly and end the Virginia Beach Development Authority. It is a citizen-hostile organization that doesn't even allow us the opportunity to come and speak on agenda items. It meets during the middle of the day. I've gone to their meetings. It really is an abomination to our city government. We have you, our elected representatives, on our city council. We have our school board to deal with half of our budget. But the quiet third leg of this government is the Development Authority, all appointed, putting us in all kinds of debt, taking our property and getting in an endless stream of ill-advised investments that actually don't return an investment. Town Center is a great example. You'll hear marketing pitches of what a great success it is. Yet the TIF grows and grows and grows and consumes property, redirecting the taxes that would have gone into the general fund to an endless TIF, Mr. Davenport. This is crazy, and you have the power to go to the General Assembly, and you, as our elected representatives, take control over those issues away from an all-appointed body. When I heard the details of the Green Flash Brewery and the fountain that we purchased for Mr. Miller, who's been appointed to the Development Authority and owns the land and leased it to the... It's crazy. And the conflict of interest that we've already seen with City View 2 and an endless amount of bankers and real estate developers, it's like corruption on steroids. Now, tonight, you're here passing a $2 billion budget in CIP and doing all this, but you're about to throw another $700,000 into a slush fund called an opportunity fund to fritter away on yet an undefined purpose. Is that a fiduciary responsibility for our money? I know you can't do anything about the Development Authority because the General Assembly created it, except you can defund it. You can stop appointing people to it. That brings me to my final point about tonight's appointment process. We got to change that. You don't advertise who's running. You have no input from us, but you're just going to appoint people to these authorities with zero input from the public. We can do better, and you guys seriously need to revisit this issue of the Development Authority. Thank you.
That's all the speakers, sir.
Any can I have a motion?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
So moved.
Yep. There you
To
go.
approve.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded
And this is money that's coming from the state.
Going to LifeNet.
It's going to LifeNet.
Yes.
All right, any discussion further? Yes, Mr. Vaughn.
Well, I do believe this is a legitimate allocation. I think the points that were made relative to the transparency of the Development Authority, that they don't broadcast on the web, though I know I've made that request on more than one occasion, and that how we issue debt through it are legitimate concerns. But relative to this vote and the merits of this vote, this is a good allocation of the money for a good purpose. But there is underlying merit in the comments made.
All right. Anybody else? Vote is open.
By a vote of 9 to 0, you have approved the ordinance.
We'll now go to item M2, which is the 23rd Fund Parking LLC item under planning for special exception for alternative compliance to Oceanfront Resort District Form-Based Code, Ray Commercial Parking Lot at the northwest corner of 23rd Street and Pacific Avenue in the Beach District.
Sam Baraki, and then Philip Decker.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, member of the council. My name is Sam Baraki. I'm with Site Improvement Associates and here on behalf of the applicant. We have worked with staff on this project and we got staff recommendation for approval. The project consists of a paid-for parking and staff recommend approval on this project. Planning Commission also recommend approval. There was some concern with some of the neighbors on the property, and we worked with staff to work those issues. One of them is a setback from the adjacent property owner, and we did provide a setback even though the ordinance does not require the setback. And we here to respectfully ask your support, and I will stand by to answer any questions.
Are there any other speakers?
Philip Decker. And then after Mr. Decker will be Barbara Messner.
Hello, council. I'm Philip Decker of Norfolk, formerly of Virginia Beach. I had a business here for a couple decades and lived here also. Just calling after the Planning Commission approval. I was just hoping y'all would accept that and we could move forward, try to get that corner, the northwest corner of 23rd Pacific looking a little better than it does now. Thank you very much.
Barbara Messner.
Yeah, I lived on 24th Street for 10 and a half years. I'm very familiar with this area, and I watched when they built the Harris Teeter. There were several stories of fill dirt to build it. It floods all the time. There's ducks that live there in the floodwater. The form-based code was created in 2012. Why have a code if you're going to amend it every 5 minutes for select developers and then charge them a fee? I just looked at all the fees in the on the agenda. The Planning Department, Virginia Beach Economic Development Authority have way too much power. 23rd Street is traffic congested. How many of y'all actually, Davenport, I know you own a lot of property down there, so you're at the oceanfront a lot. But how many of the rest of y'all are actually down there and see the flooding and the roads that are literally falling apart? None of the potholes, Mr. Hanson, you know the one on Republic Road and the one on Laskin Road that y'all have patched a few times. It doesn't hold. And the retention pond on Republic Road, that doesn't have the stones all the way around. It's created the overflow since they've added so many new projects over there. Venture Properties took over that shopping center where Michael's is and the new Panera. But there's a huge, huge body of water next to the retention pond that I think is overflow. I mean, our roads are in deplorable condition, and I'd be ashamed to be one of y'all, and I'd be ashamed to make excuses. Mr. Moss and Mr. Dyer, we need to discuss this more. This is the best we can do. Baloney. Shame on y'all.
That's all the speakers, sir.
Mr. Jones, motion to approve as amended.
Motion's been made to approve, seconded. Any discussion? If not, the vote is open.
By a vote of 9-0, you have approved the application.
We will now go to appointments. Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I move for appointment to the following boards and commissions of following individuals. To the 2040 Vision Action Community Coalition, Georgia Allen, Kyle Corte, Peggy Lane, and Martha McLeese. To the Arts and Humanities Commission, Mary Nell Gordon and Benito Loyola. To the Bayfront Advisory Commission, Scott Ayers, Faith Christie, Wallace Damon, Charles Faison Jr., Charles Malvin, Stacy Shiflett, and Martin Thomas. To the Beaches and Waterways Commission, Betsy Atkinson, Paul Hamaker, Christopher Jacobs, and MC Munden. To the Bikeways and Trails Advisory Committee, William Hart, Stephen Romine, and Kimberly Schuler. To the Board of Building Code Appeals, Michael Lathrop. To the Community Policy and Management Team, Dr. Suzanne Baldwin. To the Eastern Virginia Medical School, David Arias. Hampton Roads Planning District Commission, Councilman Ben Davenport, Mayor Lewis Jones, Councilman John Earn, and Council Lady Rosemary Wilson. To the Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization, Mayor Jones as a voting member and Vice Mayor Jim Wood as an alternate. To the Social Services Board, Norma Brummage, Donna Morris, Lucynthia Rawls, and Andrew Richmond. To the Tidewater Community College Board, Dr. Barry Brown. To the Tidewater Youth Services Commission, Olympia Perkins. To the Transportation District Commission of Hampton Roads, Brian Solis as first alternate, Tara Reel as second alternate, and Vice Mayor Jim Wood. To the Water Task Force, Councilman John Moss. So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Are there any further nominations? If not, the vote is open.
By a vote of 9-0, you have appointed those as read by the Vice Mayor.
Is there any unfinished business to come before the council? Any new business? If not, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.